David Anthony McGreavy, also known as the Monster of Worcester, or the real Friday the 13th killer. If you haven't already, go ahead and click that subscribe button and click that like button. I'm Mr. Wade and Mrs. Crime. Let's begin our unfortunate story about David McGreavy. David McGreavy is an English convicted triple murderer who killed and dismembered his friend's 3 children in the year of 1973. He was in the news in the year 2013 when an anonymity order imposed in the year 2009 was lifted based on findings that there was a public interest in his application for parole and that there was no immediate danger to his life. He was held in a vulnerable prisoners unit where he spent most of his 40 years in prison until he was released on parole in December in the year of 2018. Mr. David McGreavy was born in 1951 in Southport, Lancashire. He was the second of 6 children. His father, Thomas, was a sergeant in the British Army, and the family moved frequently between different army posts. In the year of 1967, David McGreavy left school and joined the Royal Navy, where he hoped to make a career. However, he was dismissed from the Navy in August 1971 after being court-martialed for starting a fire that destroyed a mess wardroom. Mr. McGreavy then moved back in with his parents in Worcester. His fiancée broke up with him and he was sacked for several jobs. Fed up with the lack of work and heavy drinking, his parents forced him to move out. In the year of 1972, Mr. McGreavy, unable to live with his parents, he began boarding with his friends, Clive Kenneth Ralph and his wife, Dorothy Elsie, and their 2 small children. Paul Kenneth, born November 20th, 1968, and Dawn Maria. Clive and Elsie had been school friends, and there was a 5-year difference between them, but they decided to get married in the year of 1968 of September, when Elsie was 16 and she was pregnant with Paul. At this time, McGreavy moved in. Elsie was pregnant with Ralph's 3rd child, Samantha Jane, who was born July 14th of 1972. Around this time, Mr. McGreavy held a factory job. He was paid $6 a week as for rent, and well as sometimes cooking, sometimes on Sundays, making great dinner. Although newspapers reported in 1973 that McGreavy and Elsie had an affair, and Elsa denied all this. As time moved on, Clive Ralph worked for his father as a lorry driver. When baby Samantha was about 7 months old, Elsa became a barmaid, and McGreavy acted as a babysitter for the Ralph children at that time. During this time of McGreavy babysitting, family and neighbors as well as the Ralphs knew McGreavy as being a person who loved children, including the Ralph children. According to Elsa, he would frequently play with the children and acted like he was their father, going so far as to chastise her for her discipline. On Friday 13th, April 1973, Elsa Ralph was picked up from work by Clive, who had left home late with the children fast asleep. Clive would usually pick her up and they would tidy up things for closing at the print. When the Ralphs arrived at their home, the police were already there and escorted them to the police station, where they were told of their children's murder. McGreavy, who was known to be a habitual drinker with a violent temper, were inhibited and gone to the nearby Vauxhall pub on the Ashfield Road, now called the Curry House, earlier that evening with a friend, where he drank 5 to 7 imperial pints of beer. The two men had played cards and darts, though a small altercation took place prior to leaving the pub. After McGreavy had put a cigarette out in his friend's beer, Clive had picked up McGreavy up from the Vauxhall and brought him home to look after the children while Clive went to pick up his wife, Elsa, from work. Sometime between 10:15 and 11:15 p.m., a drunk McGreavy became infuriated with the Ralph children, beginning with the baby, Samantha, who had been crying for her bottle. McGreavy violently killed Samantha and then the other two children, each in a different manner. 8-month-old Samantha died from a skull fracture. 2-year-old Don had throat slit, and 40-year-old Paul was strangled. After killing the 3 children, McGreavy went down to the basement and retrieved a pickaxe. He further mutilated their bodies with a pickaxe before impaling the 3 bodies on the spikes of wrought iron fence in a neighbor's yard. He then left the home. McGreavy was arrested by police at 3:50 a.m., walking along the road near the Ralph's home. Upon his arrest, McGreavy reportedly said, "What's this all about?" At first, McGreavy denied any responsibility, but several hours later said, "It was me, but it wasn't me," after which he described in graphic detail what he had done. He told police that, "I put my hand over Samantha's mouth, and it went from there. It's all in the house. On Paul, I used a wire. I was going to bury him, but I couldn't. I went outside and put them on the fence. All I could hear is Kiki's kids, kids." McGreavy's only explanation for the murders was that the baby would not stop crying. On June 28, 1973, McGreavy appeared in court and pleaded guilty to the murders of all 3 Ralph's children. The hearing lasted only 8 minutes because McGreavy pleaded guilty and there was no defense plea, no motive, and no case of diminished responsibility. McGreavy was sentenced to multiple life terms with minimums of 20 years. In prison, he was subjected to frequent abuse by other prisoners and spent most of his 45 years behind bars in protected conditions. He was reported to have successfully adjusted and accepted rehabilitation and engaged in painting. In the year of 2018, in the month of December, following a parole hearing, the report said that he had changed considerably over the last 45 years and legally cleared him for release on parole.
A lot of it was to think that they had let him go after all the fighting I've been doing to keep him in. If this happened to one of those people on the parole board, would they think about releasing him? Would he even still be alive to be released? So why? Because there's other people as well in the prisons. I know they might have killed somebody, but not in the state that he done my children in. And they haven't been put up for parole. So why are they?
I hope you enjoyed this unfortunate story of the 3 little kids killed by Mr. McGreavy. I'm Mr. Wade and Mrs. Crime. A lot more coming from Tombstone Whispers. Until then, we bring it to you.